So I read around 50 to 100 books each year, and books have been the single biggest factor in helping me start and grow my business to 7 figures, in being able to quit my day job as a doctor, and in my own personal development. So in this video, we're gonna go over the 15 best books I read this year across a range of genres, so hopefully you'll get some recommendations for books that you can read too. Alrighty, so book number 1 is The Pathless Path by Paul Millard, imagining a new story for work and life. And this is great if, for example, you are struggling with trying to figure out what to do with your career, and maybe you're not sure if the default path of like working a corporate job or going into a very traditional field like medicine or law or banking or consulting or anything like that. If you're not sure if that's really for you, and you maybe want to explore what life means when you're kind of somewhat decorrelated from what you do with your career, then this is a super interesting book. It's probably the one I have most gifted to people this year. And we've got like 10 copies of it that I always keep on me so that whenever anyone comes to visit me who has a dilemma about, hey, I'm not sure if I enjoy my job, or I'm a student and I'm not really sure what to do, I say, you know what, just have a look, have a read of this book. It's very quick to read. And the nice thing about it is that it basically questions the idea that's so prevalent in society that who we are is what we do. It's like when someone asks you, what do, you tend to respond with your job title. And that's a bit weird. That's a bit rogue. When did that happen? Is that really how you want to be? It's like I struggled with this a lot last year when I left medicine, and being attached to the identity of being a doctor was such a core part of me that it was hard to let that go. But reading this book genuinely helped, and helped me approach a different way of thinking about my career and my life. Second on the list, we have Someday is Today, 22 Simple Actionable Ways to Propel Your Creative Life by Matthew Dix. And this is a great book to read if, for example, you have kind of dreams of like creative things that you might want to do, like maybe writing a book or starting a podcast or a YouTube channel or a business or anything like that, where you feel like the timing is not quite right. And I just love the way Matthew kind of tells stories in the book and the way he approaches, I guess, time management. Like in a way, it's a productivity book, but whenever I read Matthew's stuff, and he's got another amazing book, Storyworthy, which was my favorite book of 2020, which is all about how to tell better stories. But like on the surface, these are productivity books or self-help books, but actually within them, you get just such fantastic stories and just really great general life stuff. I consider Matthew like a bit of a mentor. I've actually done a few coaching sessions with him where he's kind of helped me out with my book and stuff. He's like a dude in his 50s. He's done a lot of stuff, published a lot of books, and it's nice to learn from someone who has gone through life and has like kids and things like that, where it's just a completely different perspective to the entrepreneur bros in their 20s that I normally speak to. But fantastic book, Someday is Today, realize your creative dreams. It's just sick, 100% recommend. All right, at number 3 on the list, we have Beyond Wealth by Alexander Green, The Roadmap to a Rich Life. And this is interesting because this guy, Alexander Green, he's again, some old dude. He's like worked in the field of investment advice and financial writing, and his whole career has been in the world of money. And this book is about basically happiness beyond money. Like he doesn't talk about money very much. And he starts the book with this: Beyond Wealth, a friend asked with a strange look when she heard the title of my new book. Why beyond wealth? I'd be happy to settle for wealth. No, she wouldn't. You can't wear your stock portfolio, ride on your bank account, or eat gold and silver coins. Money is never an end, only a means to an end. Even if you have plenty of money and the things it can buy, your life won't mean much if you don't have decent health, someone to love, close friendships and personal interests, and something to get you out of bed in the morning. It's just like a collection of life lessons that this dude who has spent a lifetime working with people who are just insanely rich and probably being insanely rich himself, he's kind of realized that this is the thing that brings true happiness and joy. And like it's weirdly not a normal self-help book. I kind of picked it up on the recommendation of someone who works with Tim Ferriss. He said that this is actually a great book to read. I was like, okay, cool. I mean, I'll check it out. I thought it was gonna say invest in relationships and like have experiences rather than things, but it's a lot deeper than that. He talks about like appreciating jazz music and appreciating like classics of literature and art and music and theater and stuff like that. It's just like a different approach to, I guess, a self-help book of like how to be happier, where reading this has genuinely made me try and develop more of an appreciation of arts and culture and history and philosophy and politics, and that appreciating those things does actually have the potential to potentially kind of make me happier, level up my life, all this kind of stuff. Even now, it's weird because I'm very much using the language of self-help gurus, like level up your life and increase your happiness. It's about more than that. Like, it's not just about like how to become happier. He talks about like love and health and friendships and philosophy and history, science, spirituality. It's just so much good stuff. Like every chapter I found myself highlighting stuff and just appreciating the perspective here. So if you are interested in, for example, a book that will lead you to a rich life, but you've kind of thought that, hey, this obsession that we have in society with like chasing more and more money feels like maybe not the right thing, then this is interesting. I think you'll find a lot of value from this book, Beyond Wealth by Alexander Green. Oh, and by the way, if you're enjoying this list of books so far and you might have got some good recommendations, I would love it if you can just hit the like button. Apparently it's useful for the YouTube algorithm, but if you can do a cheeky smash of the like button, I'd be enormously grateful. All right, next on the list, we have The 3 Alarms, A Simple System to Transform Your Health, Wealth, and Relationships Forever by Eric Partaker. This is another self-help book. So sorry if you're not into that genre, but I mean, there's timestamps below, so you can check out other non-self-help books if you would like. I liked this because it has given me 3 pieces of tangible, practical advice that I still use to this day. Number 1 is the concept of the 3 alarms, where basically I have 3 alarms on my phone, 9 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6:30, that remind me what kind of identity I want to hold on to in those particular times. Number 2 is the idea of the ideal week. This is something that I did a few months ago when I first read this, and it's been super, super helpful. I now have in my calendar an idealized representation of what I want my week to look like, and this helps me be more intentional towards life. And thirdly is the idea of a weekly review, where basically most weeks, some weeks, I kind of review my week, and I use the method that he talks about in the book. Super quick, super easy to read. And again, the thing I like about this is that even though he's like a CEO coach and it's technically like a business book and would be in the business category, he talks about kind of health, wealth, and relationships as like being the 3 key areas of life. And I think a lot of us can over-index on the wealth part and the career part and the success part and neglect our health and our relationships. So the thing I liked about this was that it really encourages you to take a almost businessy approach to things like health and relationships. Sounds weird, but it's not. It's just about being intentional with it in the same way that you'd be intentional about your stocks portfolio or about your business planning or things like that. So yeah, if that sounds up your street, check it out. The 3 Alarms by Eric Partaker. Next, we have The Art and Business of Online Writing by Nicholas Cole. While I have recommended mostly The Pathless Path for people who are struggling to figure out what they want to do in life, The Art and Business of Online Writing is the book that I've most often recommended to people who have decided that, for whatever reason, they want to make a career or make money through some kind of internet creator type thing, whether that's writing or podcasting or videoing. I think this book, even though it's about online writing, has really good lessons for how to do this, whether like even outside of writing. And Nicholas Cole's story is amazing. I actually met him yesterday. He featured on my podcast, Deep Dive, link down below. You know, we met in real life for the first time, and it was great talking to him. And he talks about his, in the book, like his background as being like a pro World of Warcraft gamer when he was like 17, and how that ended up kind of not being able to make him a living, and how he discovered writing on the internet, and now he makes like 7 figures plus every year through online writing, which feels a bit rogue. Everyone I've recommended this to has said that this has just been a game-changing book for them in the world of online creatory type stuff. So if you're in that world or interested in potentially being in that world, check this out, The Art and Business of Online Writing by Nicholas Cole, 100% would recommend. And next we have an absolute classic, which I'd never read before this year, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It almost feels weird to be recommending this book because this has been around for like decades, over 40 million copies sold. That's insane. That's absolutely ridiculous for a nonfiction book, in fact, for any kind of book. And I've just seen this so often. It's just such a staple in the productivity self-help genre that I kind of thought, it's, you know, it's almost like the 4-Hour Workweek, where it's been recommended so often that like, surely there's nothing new here. Surely everyone has already figured all this stuff out. But I started reading it and I was just blown away by how incredible this book is. And in a way, this is probably the best self-help book I've ever read, which is probably why it's I think the world's most successful, most famous self-help book, possibly other than How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's just incredible. Like, I was, again, if you look at the table of contents, if you read a summary of the book, I'd seen summaries of this. I'd read summaries of the 7 Habits. I was like, okay, whatevs. There's nothing interesting here. Fine, be proactive, fine. Begin with the end in mind. But these 7 habits are just, like when you actually read the stories in the book and appreciate where Stephen Covey's coming from, he's also a dad, and so he uses loads of like parenting examples and examples from like real life. Again, this is not someone who is like a bro in their 20s trying to give someone life advice. This guy has like lived life and coached a ton of people and has distilled basically everything around success into these 7 habits. And a remarkably large part of this is about emotional intelligence and about appreciating the emotional ingredients to success and to living a good life, emotional and empathetic communication and stuff. And that's just absolutely not what I was expecting when I picked this up. I thought it was going to be a quote standard self-help book that just talks about how to be more productive. I know, it was sick. So if you have also been putting this off, like I did, for years because it seems too mainstream, then it's really good. Probably the single best self-help book I've ever read in my life. So if you like the genre, you got to read this book. 100% would recommend. Oh, and by the way, if you're enjoying this so far and you too have read something in this year that you have enjoyed, I would love it if you can leave a comment down below. What would you recommend to me for me to read? leave a comment down below. We'd love to see, and it'd be nice to crowdsource some of these comments and get some book recommendations. Okay, next on the list, we have a very short, very tactical book by Daniel Priestley called Scorecard Marketing, the 4-step playbook for getting better leads and bigger profits. This is relevant if you have a business or if you want to start a business. It's not relevant beyond that point. So if you don't want to start a business, you can completely skip this one, or if you don't have a business, don't worry about it. But if you do have a business or you want to start one, this book basically talks about how everything is downstream of lead generation, and essentially how you can kind of understand why people buy stuff and then how to sell people stuff by solving problems for them through this idea of scorecard marketing. He also has a software called Score App, which we've started using in the business. We'll put a link down below. I think we're going to invest in it as well, or we have already invested in it because we're now mates with Daniel Priestley and it's just good. So you can check out the software, but even if you don't want to check out the software, the book is really good for marketing in particular. And I think like marketing was a particular or still is a particular weakness of mine. I've never really thought much about marketing. I've never really tried to read much about marketing, but it's clearly a super important part of any business. And now that I've read Scorecard Marketing, and I also read the 12 Immutable Laws of Marketing recently, I feel like I'm a bit more leveled up in that field, and I'm actively reading more in that field to just improve my general business chops, because sales and marketing, super important stuff. Is it 22? Yeah. I've just been told it's 22 laws rather than 12 laws, whatever. Anyway, next on the list, we have What We Owe the Future by Will McCaskill, A Million Year View. I've done a book club episode about this that'll be linked up there, but basically what it argues is, the position of long-termism, that we should care about the lives of people who are not yet alive today. And it's interesting. Like, I wouldn't say that I 100% agree with everything in the book, and this book is particularly interesting in light of the whole Sam Bankman-Fried FTX stuff, because, a lot of people view long-termism as a philosophy as being too utilitarian, potentially. Like, apparently someone described this book as a cross between a philosophy academic textbook and a pamphlet for activists. And I think that's a reasonable summary. Like, I feel like reading this leveled up my own understanding of philosophy and what sort of stuff moral philosophers and stuff think about, the ideas of stagnation, the idea of moral change. And I also feel like it gave me a little bit more of an appreciation for things like the risks of AI and nuclear war and bioterrorism and moral value lock-in and these other things that he talks about. I have an interview with Will on my podcast Deep Dive that'll be linked down below up there as well if you would like to check that out, if you would prefer to listen to I think we did that interview before I read the book. And so it's like, that's me being a total noob and him explaining some of these key ideas to me. And then I read the book when it came out. So if you are interested in philosophy, if you're interested in potentially kind of having an impact with your life or with your career or with your money or with your time, this is interesting. I'm not necessarily saying it's going to completely change the way you look at the world. It kind of did for me in that I didn't know about this long-termism stuff until I read the book, and now I do. And so I feel like I've got this firmware update in my mind. But yeah, What We Owe the Future, good stuff. Stephen Fry says, a book of great daring, so realistic, so optimistic, so damn readable, a miracle. I wouldn't entirely agree with the readable part. It can get a little bit dense in places. The audiobook in particular is good because then you can get through the density, but there's like graphs and stuff and it's good. This like leveled up my understanding of the world. Yeah, would recommend. All right, next we have another interesting, very, very short, I guess, self-help book, The Go-Giver, a little story about a powerful business idea. I love these sorts of business books that are fables. This is a fable. It's just like, it's a story. It's a story that like a 7-year-old could read, but it's so good. I listened to this on Audible. This was a gift from Tintin, one of our team members. I listened to it on Audible after someone else recommended it on a podcast. And I was like, oh my God, this is so good. Yeah, I'd say in terms of bang for buck, like the value you get, it's entertaining to read because it's a story. It's not like telling you to do stuff. It's just like a story, like a fable, and it's very short. And I think, yeah, it's just sort of changed the way that I think about like business and life and relationships with people. It's not just like a business book, it also bleeds into other areas of life. Adam Grant apparently said, The Go-Giver is the most important parable about business and life of our time. Global bestseller, all this stuff. It's just so good. It's so good. Basically, the key model is that you should be more giving in your approach to stuff and like give without an expectation of something in return. And a lot of us have more of a transactional approach to life, especially in the modern capitalistic society that we live in. Is good, would recommend. The Go-Giver, very, very nice and easy read as well. All right, continuing, we have The Luck Factor by Richard Wiseman. I'm gonna make a confession here. Like half of these books are from people who have, like maybe half of these books are from people who I either know on the internet or have interviewed on my podcast and therefore gotten to know. Because usually when I interview someone, I read their book beforehand or listen to their book on Audible. And a lot of the time, if I like someone's book, we will then reach out to them for the podcast interview. Now, I think for this one, The Luck Factor, I first read this when I was about 16 years old. This was when I was first getting into close-up magic and also kind of personal development and reading blogs like Life and Lifehacker and stuff. And I came across this, The Luck Factor, which is basically a book about how to get luckier in life. And it's by Richard Wiseman, who is a psychology professor. When we were figuring out like who do we want to interview for the podcast. I thought, oh, Richard Wiseman, he's a magician, he's a psychologist, he's cool. And so we reached out to him and got an interview with him on the podcast, which is now live. You can check it out on any podcast app or on the YouTube channel, where we talked about this idea of luck. And I remember reading this book and this having a big impact on my life, because basically what he argues in the book is that some people in the world consider themselves lucky and others consider themselves unlucky. But actually, the people who consider themselves lucky, they seem to just have generally better lives and seem to be happier and seem to be less stressed and more resilient and be more productive and more creative. He's kind of exploring initially, like, is luck just a function of success? Like, if you're just really smart or you just do really well, do you start to consider yourself a lucky person? Or is it more than that? Can we change our approach to things? Can we change our mindset so that we become luckier? And he basically argues, yes. He's done tons and tons of research about this. It's very evidence-based, but also very readable. It's got some super interesting and nice stories. And it's about the 4 principles that will change your luck and your life. We are going to do a book club episode about this, which I'm going to film very soon. So that'll be linked there or up there whenever that comes out. That'll summarize the book for you. But it's very readable. It's kind of short. You can get it on Audible. I listened to it on Audible this time around. I read it on Kindle, I think, when I was 16. It's great because it does give some practical, actionable advice on how to become the sort of person that would consider themselves lucky. So if you, for example, currently consider yourself unlucky, then consider reading the book. And if you're the sort of person that considers yourself lucky or neutral, then you can check it out anyway. It does have some good actionable tips for, just increasing the amount of serendipity that you come into contact with and just generally good vibes all around. All right, next. This one's controversial. The Way of the Superior Man, a spiritual guide to mastering the challenges of women, work, and sexual desire by David Data. I got recommended this from watching Hamza, a fellow YouTuber that some of you guys might be familiar with. And he kept on banging on about The Way of the Superior Man. And I was like, come on, this is gonna be one of these shitty pickup artist-y type books. I've read a few of those in my time, back in my youth, purely for science. And so I had fairly low expectations going into it, but I thought, hey, Hamza really recommends this. He raves on about it all the time. Why don't I read the book? And then I started reading it and I was like, oh my God, it's interesting. It's interesting. I don't want to talk about it too loudly because I don't want to get canceled because this is somewhat controversial, but I'm going to read out this quote from Tony Robbins. He's fairly cancel-proof. The Way of the Superior Man lays out a challenge before all men to fulfill their true purpose and to be authentically masculine. It will guide you on your journey to a successful and spiritually complete way of life. Step up to the plate with this book in your hand. And this is what David Data says on the back. When a man's value is no longer measured by what he does, by his finances or his social standing, how does he determine his worth? In our new world, a man's presence, his depth of awareness, is his most valuable asset. Check it out. I think you will find it interesting regardless of what your particular demographics are. The Way of the Superior Man by David Data. All right, so a lot of the books in this list have been self-help books. And as you guys know, if you follow this channel for any amount of time, I'm all about kind of doing whatever it takes to basically level up my thinking and level up my life and become happier and be more productive and healthier and all of that kind of fun stuff. But one of the key things that I don't take care enough of is my nutrition. And that's why I signed up to Heights, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. Now, Heights is a brain care smart supplement that I've been taking since November of 2021. It's 2 capsules that you take every morning, and it contains like 20 different micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, omega-3, like blueberry extract, a bunch of these things that A, there's a bunch of evidence that we should have these in our diet, and B, there's a bunch of evidence that these contribute to brain care. Hopefully, fingers crossed, reducing our risk of developing kind of brain-related problems further down the line, like Alzheimer's disease and dementia and Parkinson's. And the great thing about Heights is that they're very evidence-based in everything that they do. They have a whole thing on their website that has, like, for every single ingredient in the capsule, they've got like this enormous bank of evidence as to, okay, why this ingredient? How have we sourced it? How do we make sure it's the highest quality? Why have we decided on this particular dose of this ingredient? Ideally, in an ideal world, you would be getting all the nutrients you need from your actual diet. But if you look at the stats, 99% of us in the Western world don't actually have the perfect Mediterranean gold standard diet. I certainly don't. I live off takeaways quite a lot. It's not very good, despite all the self-help books I read. And so the nice thing about Heights is that it lets me cover my bases when it comes to micronutrients without having to do annoying stuff like drinking green sludge or anything like that. It's super easy to sign up if you want to try Heights out. Just go to yourheights.com and you can sign up to the monthly or the quarterly subscription. It just comes in through your letterbox. It's nice and easy. I pay for the quarterly subscription because it's fewer deliveries and I get like 3 months worth of it in one go. And this is what I have every morning with water, along with my finasteride, which is a tablet I take for my hair loss. Anyway, if that sounds good, then head over to yourheights.com. And if you use the coupon code ULI15 at checkout, that will give you an additional 15% off the already discounted price of the quarterly subscription. So thank you so much, Heights, for sponsoring the video, and let's get on with the list. All right, next we have $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozi. How to make offers so good people feel stupid saying no. Again, if you are starting a business or if you run a business, this is, I think, required reading. And I'd kind of been following Alex Hormoz's journey. He's just absolutely blown up on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and stuff this last year or two. And I knew he had a book. And I was like, whatever. And then like dozens of people, well not dozens, like 5 to 10 people all independently recommended that, oh my God, you've got to read $100 million offers. And so I listened to the audiobook, and we got the physical book. And it's bloody incredible. Like, literally, as soon as I started listening to it, I sent it to everyone in my team being like, guys, we all have to listen to this right now. And we need to just basically follow it step by step for all of the products that we make from now on forevermore, because it's just an incredible distillation of like how to craft an offer, how to create a pitch when it comes to selling something, how to make offers so good that people feel stupid saying no. It's just sick. 100% would recommend if you run a business or if you're thinking of starting a business someday. Okay, 2 more non-fiction recommendations before we go on. Sadly, I don't have the physical versions of them. We've ordered them from Amazon, but they came late in arriving. These are both audiobooks that I listened to. The first one is Sapiens. Yes, I finally listened to / read Sapiens this year, even though people have been banging on about it for the last like God knows how long. It seems like everyone I know owns a copy of Sapiens. Very few people I know have actually read Sapiens, but it's again one of those things like The 7 Habits where it was almost too mainstream. I was like, I don't know, what's this book even going to be? Like everyone's talking about Sapiens, it can't be that good. And then I started listening to it and I was like, okay, I can see why everyone's talking about this. This is really, really, really good. And the reason I got into Sapiens is that I decided this year, partly after reading Beyond Wealth, that I wanted to get more into history and care more about the history of the world and understanding what the deal with history is. And you know, when I go to places, I go to museums and I'm like, museums are a waste of time. But the reason I think museums are a waste of time is because I don't have the historical context to appreciate what is going on in the museums and what's interesting about archaeological sites and stuff like that. And Sapiens, you know, it's a brief history of humankind. It genuinely is a brief history of humankind. And I feel, again, like listening to Sapiens, I was just like blown away by how good a book it is to read. And like just the writing in it, it's just kind of funny, made me laugh out loud in parts as well. And it also just, I feel like, has leveled up my understanding of the world in a nice way, in a very, very, very readable way. So if you're interested in getting into history, or you haven't yet read Sapiens and you've been putting it off like I did because everyone seems to be talking about it. I also know about 50 people who have started reading Sapiens but couldn't finish it because it feels a bit dense. This is why the audiobook is really good. Like, Audible are not even sponsoring this video, but I just bang on about them all the time. We'll put a link down below if you want to check it out. But in particular, as an audiobook, it's good because you can just passively listen to it and it's really, really, really good. And then one more non-fiction book we have before we turn to some fiction book recommendations, and that is The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. This is super interesting. This is in the realm of spirituality. It's like this dude who discovered at like the age of 21 that, you know, he asked this question like, what is that voice in my head? Just trying to answer this question of what is that voice in my head led him down this whole path in like yoga and meditation and Zen Buddhism, and he ended up opening his own monastery, and he ends up becoming like CEO of this sort of $1 billion medical tech company. And it's called The Surrender Experiment because he decides at some point in his 20s, he's just gonna, from now on, surrender to the flow of life. And he's just gonna say yes to things that come his way, and he's just gonna surrender and he's gonna see what happens. And this journey takes him to absolutely insane places. I was like actively going for walks around the block because I wanted to listen to more of this rather than actually doing work or filming videos, because it was just so gripping, especially the first half. So yeah, Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, if you've ever been interested in the idea of spirituality or yoga or meditation or anything along those lines. All right, 2 more, and now we have fiction books. So the first one I want to talk about is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is a book that was recommended to me by Grace Beverly when I had her on the podcast, and apparently went like viral on TikTok, and it's sick. I listened to it on audiobook. Great book, very nice read. Everyone I've recommended it to since has said this was a really good book. It's kind of about this actress called Evelyn Hugo who was like famous in the 40s or 50s or something like that. And it talks about her journey through like being in Hollywood and all the things she has to do to kind of get ahead, and how the film industry treats women and their sexuality and all of the weird stuff that goes on there, and how she navigates all of those with like various husbands along the way. It's so good. I cried at the end, not gonna lie. If you're looking for a fairly easy read that's super interesting as well, I would recommend The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. And then finally, I have not read very much new fiction this year, other than 7 Husbands and a few others, because I actually spent the year rereading the first 3 books of the Stormlight Archive series by Brandon Sanderson. So we have The Way of Kings. This is paperback, so it comes in 2 parts, part 1 and part 2, sick. We have book number 2 of the Stormlight Archive, Words of Radiance. And then we have book number 3 of the Stormlight Archive, Oathbringer, which also comes in 2 parts. And I'm in the process of rereading Rhythm of War, which is book number 4. These are really long and take absolutely ages to get through, which is why like this is basically the only fiction other than 7 Husbands that I've actually read this year. Just rereading the Stormlight Archive. and actually reading / listening. Like I've been reading some of it on Kindle, listening to some of it on Audible. It's just so good. It's bloody incredible. Like it's probably my favorite book series of all time. Maybe after Harry Potter. Yeah, it's gotta be after Harry Potter. Okay, other than Harry Potter, this is my favorite fiction series of all time. If you have not yet read any Brandon Sanderson, I actually wouldn't recommend starting with this. I'd recommend starting with The Final Empire, which is the first book in the Mistborn series. Book 7 of the Mistborn series came out like last week, and I still need to read it, but I want to reread some of the books 4, 5, and 6 before reading book 7. Anyway, that's very exciting. But the Mistborn series is bloody incredible and a great starting point into the Cosmere, the universe that Brandon Sanderson has created. It's just so good. And then once you've read the first 3 books of Mistborn, maybe 4, 5, and 6 if you want, but the first 3 in particular, then I would say read the Stormlight Archive, starting from The Wave Kings. And it's just incredible. Everyone I've ever recommended this to has absolutely fallen in love with it. And Brandon Sanderson is like famous for his like the climaxes in a non-weird way. It's like at the end of each book, there is just a freaking insane climax, and it's just like all of the shit goes down, everything happens. It like brings tears to my eyes. It's so good. Do I feel bad that I didn't read more fiction this year? Not really, because I spent all of it rereading Stormlight Archive. So in my book, that was totally worth it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you want some more book recommendations of stuff that I read last year, then check out that video over there, which is 15 books that I read in 2021 that I would recommend. Check that out. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.